Hello, hello, my loves. Welcome. We are going to be doing a deck haul video. This is going to be kind of a continuation, an updated version of the plant decks that I own. So I'm super excited, and I hope you guys are excited too. If you are lovers of plants and flowers and herbs and just you like to work with them in decks like tarot decks and oracle decks, and you will love this video. Stay tuned. So let's get started. I'm going to start off with the tarot decks first because there's only 3 tarot decks. I'm very surprised how I don't have that many tarot decks in plants and flowers. It kind of makes me want to go on the hunt now to see if I could find plant tarot decks, you know? So this is the Antique Anatomy Tarot. This is by Claire Goodchild. This deck, though, I chose to show off the mass-produced because I feel like it's really, really pretty. It is such a good deck. So it comes with a really big guidebook. And for those of you guys who love to read about the cards and like you really just like to get into the guidebooks, this is a really, really good guidebook. So I had to show that off. Your gorgeous deck. So the card backs on this one are not my favorites, but they are pretty. Like they are very simple. And then you have the cards themselves. It is a blend of skeletons and flowers. You do have a blend of the life and death in this deck, but I really love the Antique Anatomy Tarot. I love to bring this deck out during the fall season. It is like one of my favorites for Halloween, and it's just a really, really beautiful deck. So the Antique Anatomy Tarot, I hope you guys enjoy this one, especially if you decide to pick it up because it is so worth it. Next, we have the Herbcrafters Tarot. This one I am very much planning on giving more love and attention to. I do not give it enough attention. You get a nice little guidebook here. I love the card backs on this deck. I find it to be so pretty, beautiful. You have the white borders, and the imagery is just very lush. It's a lot of colors and a lot of different blends of the way that we use herbs. It's a very kind of like a kitchen witch kind of an energy. So if you're a kitchen witch, or if you just love the look of cottage vibes with the flowers, then you will probably really, really enjoy this deck. Notice it has the mushrooms, it has mugwort, plantain, you have the names of the herbs, calendula. So there's a lot of different, ooh, I love this one, the world card. Yeah, it's like a mandala. One thing that I really love about this deck, though, is it has people in it, but you don't see their faces. At least I don't think you see their faces in any of these images. Oh, I love this one, the sunflower. But see how vibrant the colors are? Super beautiful. Every single time I pull this one out, I always realize I don't use it enough. So that is the Herbcrafters Tarot. Is the Herbal Tarot. So this is a Rider-Waite clone. If you love Rider-Waite and you're looking for a Rider-Waite slash herbal deck, this is the one to go with. So here are the backs, the card backs. And the cards themselves. Each card does come with a herb. So this one is the blue flag. There are some that I've never heard of in here. So blue flag is one of them. Wild cherry bark. It's really interesting. But it does follow Rider-Waite for the most part. And if you don't really care too much about that, it's just a really pretty deck. It blends the theme of the tarot with an herb that goes best with it. There is a guidebook to this deck, but it's one of those like little tiny white books. not the best. So that's the only downfall. I think that a deck like this would actually really benefit with a nice guidebook, especially because it could go in more depth about the herb itself. So that is the Herbal Tarot. Definitely a fun little deck. Okay, so we're going to get into the Oracle decks next. I have a lot of them, guys. Soulflower. This one is so pretty. Soulflower Plant Spirit Oracle. Gorgeous guidebook. Typical Oracle deck. It's huge. These are the card backs. I love the green. And I really love this because the images are huge. So it's a big card, but you also have huge images of the flowers, and it has a little blurb at the bottom. It kind of tells you a little bit about it. So lavender restoration. Lavender's restorative and purifying energy and aroma calms and uplifts your mind and body. Like, it goes into a little bit of detail. But I found that the artwork in this is beautiful. It's kind of like a watercolor. It's very, kind of along the lines of a watercolor, but it is so pretty. Look at that. That sunflower. So definitely a deck that I think a lot of people would really appreciate. And when you're working with the flowers, you really want to be able to see it. So I love that there's no borders and that everything is just like zoomed in. Let me see if I can find another pretty. Black-Eyed Susans. Let me see. So pretty. Hedgewitch Botanical. The Hedgewitch Botanical Oracle. If you like, this one has a huge guidebook. If you like the aesthetic of white, like white backgrounds, you will really love this deck. So here are the card backs. Really simple and beautiful. And now you can see why. So the cards are white. They're completely white. There's no borders. You have a very gentle kind of text here at the bottom, which will give you the name of the herb and a little bit like one keyword. And then the images are very simple. They are pretty much line work, but you also have a little bit of it that's colored in. So it just kind of works. It's very simplistic. It's a smaller size deck. It's probably about the size of a standard tarot. But yeah, it's very simple and sweet. So I think that something like this would look really beautiful paired up with like a flashier deck, maybe like a tarot deck that has more full-blown color, like the Herbcrafters Tarot, because the oracle itself is so simple, you know. But I really love that. So here's calendula. So I like the little pops of color that it has on the images. It just kind of works. It's a very simple deck. I love it. I'm going to love all of these. So you guys are just going to hear me say it over and over and over again. This one has a really pretty box. The Spirit of Nature Oracle. I love that it has a giant tree on the cover. And of course he has a face. And it's like a gentle little old man face. Oh my goodness. Huge book. Huge guidebook. I don't pay attention to the guidebook so much, not this deck at least, but I have used it when I needed to kind of reference something in it. So here are the card backs. I believe this is the same creator, Will Worthington. Yeah. It's the same, they're illustrated by the same creator of the Druid Plant Oracle, which I'm going to show it to you next. You have just a very green card. Now, the thing is, I don't remember how much bigger these cards were because I actually trimmed the edges. I cut the edges because they were just so big. So they will look a little bit different if you were to purchase a copy of your own. I went ahead and trimmed them. So it's just like one little border. I did the same thing to the Druid Plant Oracle. So The images are pretty. They're kind of dark, like very darker, like much more darker. And like sometimes it's a little bit hard to see the details, but it just gives me this like old wisdom kind of an energy, like a grandmother wisdom, or like wisdom of like old trees, like trees that have been around for many, many years. Like that's the kind of essence that this deck gives me. The Druid plant, it is by the same illustrator, so the artwork is going to be very similar. And this one also, I did trim the cards because you could see, look at how big they would have been, right? Look at that extra space. So I had to trim them because it was just too much for me. Here are the backs. I never really like the backs in these decks. Like, I don't know what it is. It's simple, but it's just not it. So I did trim the edges. There was like 2 extra borders, I want to say. So I trimmed them so that it just had the first border, which is like, I think it's a bunch of leaves and herbs. It's really pretty. These are brighter, much more brighter than the other cards. So the images themselves kind of stick out a little bit more. And my only gripe with a deck like this is that if you're not familiar with the herb, you're gonna need to use the guidebook when you pull a card. It's just going based off of the image itself, you're not gonna get much out of it. And if you're not really familiar with the properties of that herb, yeah, it is a deck that you will need to use the guidebook. So this is kind of one of those decks where if I'm reading for somebody one-on-one, I don't necessarily use this kind of a deck because I don't want to have to use the guidebook in the middle of a session. But if I'm doing like maybe an email reading, or if I'm pulling cards just for myself to journal, then I'll use the deck. So just something to keep in mind. So now we're going to be getting into some of my other Oracle decks. This one is one of my vintage decks. It is out of print. This is the Victorian Flower Oracle by Baba Studios. This one is very special. I love the card backs. I love everything about this deck. It is created by the artwork of, oh my goodness, what is his name? JJ Grandville. So if you know JJ Grandville's artwork, like once you've seen it, you'll know exactly what it is. But it is all of his artwork. So you have flower people, it just kind of gives me like an Alice in Wonderland kind of a vibe. And I just love the simplicity of this deck. It's super sweet. It's very, like the colors are very muted and just, I don't know. I can't describe it very well. It is a vintage deck. It gives me the vintage vibes. But the thing about this one, the way it reads is very sassy. I have noticed the personality of this deck is like, it's not going to like everybody. And it's going to give you some like truths in your reading. Like it's going to read you to filth and you may not like what it has to say. This is one of my favorite cards, the Water Lily. Look at how beautiful. So, yeah, it is definitely one of those decks that is not for everybody. Or it's not going to be nice to everybody is what I should say. It's out of print, unfortunately. So it is one of those where you will have to do a search on eBay and you will have to fork out quite a bit of money because they are going for quite a bit, unfortunately. Oh, since we're on the topic of the Victorian Flower, here's a knockoff version of it. I do not know if it is still available. You'll have to do a search. But this deck or this edition is created by just some random person who wanted to make her own version of the Victorian Flower because, like I said, this one's hard to find and it's super expensive. So she created one that she called the Floret Oracle. So it is called the Floret Oracle. And I think she goes by the name Chan, Chan. You'll have to do a Google search. So just Google Floret Oracle. Okay. You're going to have to do a Google search. It's a very tiny deck. I wish it would have been larger. It's one of those tiny pocket-sized decks. You have the little roses on the back, and the cards themselves are JJ Granville's artwork. It has a little bit of a border. It has a couple little blurbs, you know, to describe each card. But for the most part, the images are pretty much the same as what is in the Victorian Flower. The color scheme is very similar. It's a very like gentle, muted kind of a deck. Sorry, it's a little blurry. The little title card, the Floret Oracle. So if you could find, it's all upside down. If you could find this deck when you do like a Google search, it is kind of a cool way to have a little cheapy version of the real thing. So just a little FYI if you want a copy of it. This is the Botanical Inspirations Oracle. Botanical Inspirations is florally and beautiful and totally minty. You have these beautiful mint backs. The whole color scheme of this deck is very vintage, tea stained kind of a feel. It's really pretty. This is kind of like the deck that you would want to pull out if you were having a cup of tea and just enjoying, you know, a relaxing evening outside. Oh my gosh, it's just a really pretty one. You have, it kind of gives me this feel of like the vintage flowers, like the vintage floral artwork that you would find in books and stuff, or like on wallpaper. That's what this deck reminds me of. It just has that vintagey vibe to it. So I really, really love that. And it's a fun little deck. You get like a nice, cute little poetic kind of a blurb at the bottom. It's usually like their quotes. But it's a really gentle deck. If you like flowers and if you're into more of like a vintage flower kind of a feel, this is a fun one to have. It's the Botanical Inspirations. So speaking of the vintage flowers, here's another one that I think you would like. If you really like vintage looking flowers, here's one about roses. So this is the Oracle of the Roses. It is all roses, different types. So here are the card backs. This gorgeous red, and then you have like this pink edging, which is kind of an odd combo, to be honest, but I like it. And then you have kind of like that tea stained look, only it's a much larger card. And then of course you're going to be given the rose. It'll tell you, you know, like this one is called the Sunburst Rose, and the archetype for it is the hero. So it's kind of interesting. It is a little weird. There are times where I'm kind of like the hero. Okay, like how am I supposed to read that in a reading, you know? So there are times where I will definitely pull out the guidebook because I just need a little bit more. So that's the only downfall I would say with this deck, is that sometimes it's just not enough, the little blurb that they give you. But other than that, it is a really pretty deck. So if you like roses, if you love the vintage artwork of the flowers, and you will probably love this one. Here's another one. Definitely a really beautiful deck. I personally love roses. They are one of my favorite flowers. So I couldn't say no to this deck. Let's get into another one. Oof, this one is really, really good. This is probably one of my most favorites. This is the Herbal Astrology Oracle. So not only are you getting the herb deck, but you are also getting an astrology combo with it. So if you love herbs and you love astrology, this is going to be really, really good. This deck is very whimsical, kind of like, not fairy tale, I don't think that's a good word for it. It's just really like spiritual, for lack of a better way to describe it. The guidebook is really, really good. I definitely recommend using the guidebook when you were working with this deck. You're going to get the name of the herb, and a little blurb for it, but the artwork is what just really does it for me. This is absolutely gorgeous. It also assigns a planet or some kind of the astrology sign with it. So this one is Mars in Pluto. I believe that's Pluto. It's just really, really good. So you have some herbs that you've never heard of. You also have some really common one. This one's dragon's blood. But look at how gorgeous this artwork is. It's just so detailed. Like you literally have to look at this card up close to see everything. This one is Pau d'Arco Metamorphosis. Oh my freaking God. Look at this deck. Look at this card. How cute is that? So it's really, really good. I definitely recommend this one, especially if you love astrology, because you're going to get kind of the best of both worlds. And alone, just alone, the artwork is beautiful. You could do so much with this deck. It would definitely photograph really lovely. Nettle. I love it. So definitely this deck should be in your collection. Without a doubt. Let's get into kind of some more witchy decks. These are two witchy, more of my like witchy decks, okay? The Green Witch Oracle. So if you're a green witch, if you're a kitchen witch, if you are a witchy witch, you will like this deck. It's a lot of fun and super simple. It's a typical oracle size. Look at these card backs. I love this. You have the 4 elements, and then you have like this really pretty, like it's kind of like there's still a lot going on in the card, but it's also really simple at the same time. And I really love that the background is light and then the color of the herb will pop. It just helps it stick out so much more. You have symbolism in here. Oops, this one's upside down. Sorry, guys. You have symbolism in here. You have, I do believe it does the astrology too. So yeah, it does. You have astrology symbols in here. You kind of get a lot in one card. So it does kind of look busy, but it works because the main color is the herb itself. Isn't that beautiful? This one is what? Chrysanthemum. I love that. Look at this one. Cauliflower. You never see cauliflower in these herb decks. So the fact that this one has something like that, like that's why I like to have multiple plant decks, because not everyone is going to have the same. This one has kind of a little bit of different ones actually. Geranium. So it's a lot of fun. I think cucumber. I love that. So definitely a fun little deck. And if you're a kitchen witch, if you love to cook, if you love to put your intentions in your cooking, this may be a fun one to use. The other one I recommend is the Magical Herb Oracle. This is also kind of a witchy deck, but honestly, you guys, I use this all the time. I don't know what it is about it, but it's super intuitive. I get some of the most accurate readings with this deck. I love the card backs. They're so beautiful. Just so you kind of get like that earthy feel with them. And again, it's very simple, but it works. Let's see. The Wild Yam. So like, again, this one also has some that you don't really see everywhere. The Wild Yam, and then the blurb is abundance. So sometimes you don't even need to know, like, to be honest, you don't even need to know the herb or like the properties of it, because the card itself will give you enough. So like this one is the skull cap, and then the theme is meditation. And I have to say, when I use this deck, I don't use the guidebook unless I absolutely like want to give a more in-depth reading. Then I'll use the guidebook, but for the most part, I'm pretty good with just what's on the card. So these are my most recent decks. I have not worked with them, so I cannot give you guys an idea of like what type of a reading I would use them with, but I think you'll really like them. So first one is the Essential Oils Healing Deck. When I first saw this one, I got this on Amazon. When I first saw it, I was kind of like, essential oils, okay. But then as I was looking at the images, because I like to do a little search before I purchase something, and I realized it's an herb deck, so it was perfect. So I love the card backs. The card size is kind of a standard size, but it's longer. So it's still easy to shuffle. I've shuffled it sideways, but it is a little bit weird. It's a lot longer than what you're used to, but it's really pretty. So you have very light background. Actually, you kind of have a blend. Like you'll have whites and then some of them are black. But you get that watercolor artwork again, and it's really, really pretty. So I love that. And what I also love is that it takes up the whole card. So when you have the image that just takes up the entire card like this, you have a lot to look at, and it's just really pretty. Oh, there's some trees in here too. I love it. Some flowers. So you kind of have a blend, but I guess the whole point is this one is sandalwood. I love it. So you have the actual, like, the plant or the herb or the tree or whatever it is. That is, you know, that is what the essential oil is. That is where it comes from. And that's pretty cool. So tangerine, I love it. So if you do, like, let's say you work with aromatherapy, this would be a fun deck to have. Like, this would be kind of cool to have a visual of what plant that essential oil came from, you know? So that would be kind of cool. And the last deck I want to show you guys is called 50 Plants That Heal, Discover Medicinal Plants. Now, this deck, it's not necessarily like one that I would use in a reading. This is more of like an educational deck. But I bought it because I love it. So I thought it was just really, really cool, and it would look really pretty in pictures. Again, it is that kind of like a larger size deck. Okay, the card backs are also the images of the herb. So for example, this is thyme. So you have the image of thyme, and then on the back you have all of this useful information about it. So that's why I said it wouldn't necessarily be a deck I would pull out to do readings. This is more of like, it looks really pretty. Like, how beautiful would this look on a table with photos of crystals and stuff, you know? I don't think it has, no, it doesn't have like any metaphysical, this is cherry. It doesn't have any metaphysical messages, you know, divination. So it is just kind of like one of those, what am I looking at? Like, what am I talking about? Educational purposes, right? So if you're into that, you may love this deck. And there's supposedly a book that goes with it. So there's supposedly a book that is called The 50 Plants That Heal. And it's supposed to be really good. So, oh, look at this one. This is Arnica. Look at how beautiful. I love yellows. Oh, yellow is like one of my favorites. So yeah, that's a cool little deck, right? So yeah, you guys, that pretty much is all of the decks I wanted to show you. Let me know, what is your favorite? Do you have plant decks? I know there's so many out there. There's a mushroom one that came out that's kind of like a Rider-Waite clone that I want to pick up. There's a lot of plant decks that are indie decks, and the only thing is that they could be a little pricey. So I haven't really like purchased any of those, but I really am on the hunt now for a tarot deck. I feel like I need to add, if I'm going to add plant decks to my collection, I feel like I need to add a tarot deck. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is my updated version of what I have. I do have an older video that is about 3 years old, but a lot of those decks that I was showing in there, I have rehomed. I know I got rid of quite a few. So this is what I have now. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope that this was entertaining for you, and I will talk to you guys soon in my next video. I'll see you guys later. Bye, my loves.